Yassas. What happens when you take two vibrant brothers that are descendants from the Greeks in Constantinople, embracing their American roots, and then ask them to serve up rich tales of traditions, cuisine, childhood memories, and a hearty dose of humor? You're about to find out. This is Baklava Banter, your passport to all things Greek.
Welcome to Baklava and Banter. I'm Petraki.
And I'm Soto. Hey, you know, a large part of what we've been trying to achieve in doing this show is to highlight not only our own story of growing up Greek, but to be able to highlight the stories of other Greeks who have grown up and contributed to this incredible heritage. With that being said, our guest today began her journey in Thessaloniki, Greece, and later immigrated to the U.S. with her family. Her professional realm saw her excel as a law firm administrator, but her heart has always been dedicated to community service and cultural promotion. Residing in the Los Angeles area, she began her volunteering endeavors in the mid-'80s, holding esteemed positions at the Culver City PTA and Education Foundation. She went on to pivotal roles such as executive producer of award-winning documentaries for the Greek Heritage Society of Southern California, where she also served as president and made significant contributions to the Los Angeles Greek Film Festival. Currently, she's channeling her energy towards promoting ancient Greek drama with Theatron of the Americas and advocating for the talents and leadership of Hellenic American women with the Hellenic American Women's Council. We are thrilled to deep dive into her rich tapestry of experiences and accomplishments. Please help me extend a big kalosorisate to Shelly Papadopoulos. Welcome to the show, Shelly.
Welcome, Shelly.
Thank you. Kalosas Rika.
Yes,
Very
thank
good.
you.
It's your lucky day.
My lucky day.
That's awesome. So, how talk about how you guys, how you guys met to even get to being able to do this episode, because I think that's kind of cool.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Shelly.
How I met Peter.
Yes.
I have this Facebook group called Greek Supporting Greeks that I started, 8-9 years ago. And lately it just has exploded in membership. And I'm just on the edge of almost 10,000 members.
Wow.
And Peter joins, and then I get a message saying, hey, let's talk.
Yeah.
So basically, I wanted just to ask her to put permission so I can post about the podcast on there,
Right.
And because I didn't want to post unfortunately, Shelly, I didn't read the rules, and I didn't want to post. I didn't want to post. I know I read your comments because one post a month. I read all that, but I just didn't want to know if you're allowed to do promotional items on there. So I reached out to her, be like, "Hey, would you be okay if I did this?" She said, "Of course, if you just do it once a month." And then I sent her the materials, the first couple of episodes, and she reviewed them, and we talked again, and here we are now.
Yeah.
So the whole point of the group is to support anyone in a business endeavor, in the arts, science, academia, entertainment world. No travel and no recipes. That's it. And no politics. No politics.
Yeah.
I don't care. No politics of anywhere in the world.
Because before I sent you the links to the videos, you're like, you don't say anything bad about the Greeks, do you? In Greece, I said, absolutely not. I said, if not, we're laughing at ourselves more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Can you? So I just touched on in that intro. There's so much more to sort of unpack in there. One of the things that I think is awesome that I want you to talk about that we sort of read up on is these documentaries that you did, which were narrated by Olympia Dukakis. And
Correct.
then I think it was the second documentary that you premiered at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, where the Oscars used to be, was emceed by John Aniston, who unfortunately I think passed away in 2022.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Can you talk about a little bit what went behind creating that series to tell the story of kind of Greeks from the 1900s to present?
Sure. I joined Greek Heritage in, I want to say 1997. The organization was founded in 1985 by three individuals, Zoe Fiedler, Jim Dimitriou, and Cheryl Olson. And their whole, well, at the beginning, they wanted to, they did a lot of productions of recreating the Greek picnics the way they were held back in the day, with the Greek immigrants and stuff. And
Yeah.
then the other thing was to record a video history of the families that came here in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. And it was a formidable group. They, a lot of them lived in the central LA area and attended the Greek church, which was called the San Julian Street Church, because it was on San Julian Street. It eventually, in early 1950s, the Scores brothers built St. Sophia Cathedral, and that's where the families, a lot of the families built a church and attended. So with these interviews that kind of increased with time, we thought we were going to do one documentary, but it's too much to include. So then we thought two, and still that was too much. So we decided to make it three. And the first one was the Pioneers 1900 to 1942. And it was the pioneers and the struggles and, the hard work and everything. All the, some of them really suffered, with the language, and they thought the streets were paved with gold, and little did they know. And then the second part is the Promise of Tomorrow, 1940, 1960. And that's the first generation, how they have to be Greek inside the house and American outside. And they really did everything to maintain, the Wonder Bread, the white bread. So they changed their names, Konstantinos became Gus, and, Katerina became Kathy. And, so they went through all that. And then we come to the New Greek Americans, 1960 to 2018. And that is the second and third generation. Some kids think of themselves very Greek because they go and visit Papunya and in the Horio during the summer. Some think they're American Greek, and some just don't think anything. So we premiered first one at Fox Studios. We had the help of Jim Giannopoulos. The second one, I was president at the time, and I knew Sid Ganis, who was the outgoing president of the Academy. And I sent him an email, and I said, Mr. Ganis, do you think we could premiere there? And he said, sure, go right ahead. So at the time, I had volunteered for the film festival, and John Aniston had presented an award, and I asked him, can I contact him? So, yeah, sure. Go ahead, contact him. And he agreed to be our MC. So I was on cloud nine. And then the third premiere was at the Writers Guild about 6 months before COVID hit. Thank God we got that done. And I had Angelo Tsarouchas as our MC because he was a new Greek American, because Angelo is Greek Canadian. So the series, the trilogy has done very well. We've been in many film festivals. Part one received Best International Documentary in Panorama, Greece, which is outside Thessaloniki. Part two, we got the Best Documentary at the Beverly Hills Film Festival, and we were up against Paul Sorvino's son. So I thought, okay, it's a done deal. And we won. I was really surprised.
Wow.
And of course, when we wanted to we did enter film festivals in 2019. We got as far as New York in October 2019, and we got into the Thessaloniki Documentary Festival, which is very hard to get into, and I am going. There's no two ways about it. I was on my way there, landed in New York, visited my daughter for a couple of days, and they canceled the in-person event because of COVID. So I had to come back home.
That's
and
unfortunate.
that was in April of the same year. We screened at the London Greek Film Festival. But again, it was no in-person. Everything was online. And then nothing happened for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
and by the way,
an amazing story.
For those that aren't familiar, Jim Giannopoulos used to be the head of 20th Century Fox. So
Correct.
again,
Yes.
it's awesome. We also saw we watched the podcast that you did with Angelo, by the way, back in 2020.
Okay. I love Angelo.
I saw that podcast, and I hadn't seen his act in a while. So I said to my brother, "This is hilarious. He's hilarious." And he said, "He's a comedian." And I said, "Really?" And I looked him up again, and I saw his He does that one routine about renting a car in Greece, which is absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious. Absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious. So anyhow, so I thought that was pretty cool. Do you, one of the interesting things about it is, and we mentioned it before we started recording, is if you look at the success of My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and you listen to Nia Verdalo's story about as a Canadian American actress coming to the U.S. to L.A., finding an agent to try to find work as an actor, and having the agent tell her, "You're not pretty enough to be a star. You're not fat enough to be a character actress. And oh, by the way, you're Greek,
Yeah.
so no." And
Yeah.
having her basically say, "Hold my ouzo," and creating that based on her own family, and then having it become, I think it's still the top grossing rom-com, at least on domestic sales, 241 million, and also one of the highest ranking independent films. And then you have the documentaries and so forth that you've done. How do you think, because the Greeks that have had this, they were a minority. I know growing up, I looked different, and I learned English as a second language, Greek being first. Our parents spoke Greek and Turkish, so English was a third language. I know what it was like to be different. Do you think Greeks, there's a different vibe, especially in this country, when you see between your documentaries, when you see people like Jim Giannopoulos become the head of studios, Nia Vardalos do a Big Fat Greek Wedding? Is there a shift in the way Greeks are perceived, do you think, especially in the U.S.?
I think so, especially in the last, how many years, say 30 years. I think there's a positive image of them because, Greek families, Greek parents want their kids educated. And this was the big thing that happened, that you can see in The Promise of Tomorrow. Some of them, when military, they came out, they took advantage of the GI Bill. Per capita, Greeks are the most educated people in the world. And they want to continue that. They're, they reach for high things. They reach for high, whatever they want to do it the best. Majority of them.
Yeah.
As for Nia, actually, I was in the audience. My friends and I went to see her one-act play in Long Beach, and
Wow.
sitting in front of me was Rita Wilson.
Wow.
That was the night that Rita saw the play and connected with Nia.
Right, because even after she did the script and she tried to shop it around, they said this would be great, but it has to be an Italian family, I think is the way it goes. And it was Rita that sort of, first saw her and got hooked and introduced her to Tom Hanks.
Right.
And I think they were the executive producers, if I'm not mistaken, for that. And the rest is kind of history. The funny thing is, she said, and we're planning, by the way, if you want to be a part of this, we were talking about doing a review of My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. But she said she went from that to when they went to Greece to film the third one, the Greek government is completely behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's...
We love the notoriety.
Yeah,
exactly.
no
That's
kidding.
exactly what it is. And you know what? The funny thing that you touched on is you're talking about Greeks being the most educated and they want to kind of reach for the stars. That kind of hits home for me because my mother always told us, she tried to plan our career paths for us in a way. But at the end of the day, she told us she didn't really care what we did as long as we were the best at what we did. So, even you see that kind of like, it rings so true. And it's like almost like part of the genetic code somewhere, that they want to reach for the stars, and also when you talked about earlier about the streets being paved of gold, you know how many times we heard growing up that this mentality before they came here, that the streets were paved of gold, and then they came here and they realized the work it would take to succeed, but they were never going to get that opportunity anywhere else but in this country.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like our parents, the main reason why they came here was literally for religious persecution, just because, they're from Constantinople. And if you were a Christian at the time, you owned a business, the Turkish government was taxing you 80% just because of your religion. So, You got out when you could, and we've talked about in the past. What would our life be if they never left? Like, who would we be?
Yeah.
I'd be running some rebellion group. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. But going back to that, my brother kind of touched on your professional life, but I want to go back. What really attracted me to your story as who your father was and how you
Yeah.
came to the U.S. and why you came to the U.S. So can you just touch a base on a little bit about that and just tell us that story? Because for me, it's the first time I ever heard that type of a story before.
Yeah.
My father was a Greek Jew, Sephardic, born and raised in Thessaloniki. The family had been there generations. They originally came from Sicily, from a port. They took the name of the port, and so they have the name of the port, the Sicilian port, and they went to Thessaloniki and lived there. And I obviously was under Turkish rule at the time too.
Mm-hmm.
And World War II, the Germans, rounded up everybody in Thessaloniki, and all of my father's family were murdered by the Germans. They were murdered in the concentration camps. My father was at the age, I think he was 21, 22, so he was a perfect age to be a laborer. So they took him to Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, and then he was in Mauthausen for a while. And he was liberated after 4 years. He went back to Thessaloniki. Their home was occupied by somebody else. Couldn't do anything. His father's grocery store was taken over by someone else. Couldn't do anything. He ended up in a boarding home. And so I think it's out of either 50 or 60,000 Greek Jews that resided in Thessaloniki, only 1,950 survived. You're talking about 96% of that population was decimated. So my father got back, and the government says, oops, wait a minute, you still need to do your military service after all that. So they drafted him, and he served with my mom's oldest brother. And my mom is from Kozani. So my uncle had a heart of gold. Whenever they had to leave, my father had nowhere to go. So my uncle would take him back home. And when he was discharged, he went to my Bapu and my Yaya, and he said, I want to marry your daughter. And this is like 1949. And at the time, I probably had the most progressive grandparents because they did not care. In fact, my Yaya, after the kids were baptized, she would never let them wear a cross again because she says that the Stavros is a sign of death. And my Bapu said, I don't need to go as an ecclesia. He says, I've got an ecclesia in my heart, which is what I used to always say. I mean, I still say it. And so my mom went to Thessaloniki and stayed with an aunt until my father could figure things out. And the rabbi there, he says, we'll make you Jewish. Here you go. And so they had their wedding. And a year and a half later, I was born. And because my father had no family, he had the opportunity to immigrate somewhere. And he told my mama, we can go to Israel. And she said, no, I don't want to go. Argentina. American, yes. So I was 3 months old, and I have the ship manifest, and it says we came here as displaced persons. We were destined for Tucson, Arizona, but we landed in the port of New York, Lower Manhattan. And the Sephardic Brotherhood there said, we can go to Tucson, Arizona. So they sent us to Portland, Oregon, where I lived for 8 years in a huge Sephardic community. And then we came to LA and again in the Sephardic community. So we went to temple. We didn't go to church.
Yeah.
Wow. The Greek Jew story is an interesting one as well. And I wanted to touch on this because this reminds me of, when we used to go to Greek church growing up, and I would get asked, what part of Greece are you from? And I would say I was actually born in Constantinople. And then the next question ended up being, and I was pretty young, I would be up in the aisle waiting to get communion, and the same people would ask me, are you Greek or Turkish? And I could never understand because people didn't understand. How could you be born in what today they know as Turkey and still be Greek? Mm-hmm. To me, the Greek Jews are sort of the same. And I was telling my brother earlier that, the historical center of Sephardic life was Thessaloniki.
It was, yeah.
Right? They called it the mother of Israel. Exactly. And at the time, it was part of Greek Macedonia. But
Right.
then the Greek Jews played a huge part in the development of Christianity.
Yeah.
You know, so it's amazing to me that, and this is one of the things that I probably enjoy the most as part of us deciding to do a show like this, is it not that it forces you, but because it's a labor of love, but it makes you want to go back when we hear stories like yours and go, let me go take a look at that because that's interesting. And all of a sudden, when you dig in just a little bit, you go, of course.
Yeah.
But if you look at, if you judge the book by its cover, you go, well, how could you be Greek? How could you be? So I think that's interesting. And actually, Shelly, I actually live in Tucson, Arizona. And it's funny because one of my good friends is an optometrist. He is Sephardic Jew, but he's French. One of his parents was from Morocco, and
Yes.
so you meet him. He speaks fluent French. Lived in France for a while.
Yeah.
But grew up Jewish. And again, like I said, if you sit in front of him and he starts speaking French with a little bit of that attitude, you can swear he's French.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well,
that's awesome.
In high school, I went to school with a lot of the kids whose parents founded St. Sophia. And we
Wow.
were all placed in one of these like these AP classes. So, those are brainy kids, smart kids. And they used to say, wait, you can't be a Greek Jew. There's no such thing. And you can't be Jewish and you can't be Greek at the same time. And I said, one is an ethnicity and the other one's a religion. So
Yeah.
why aren't you at St. Sophia?
Yeah.
Because I can't. I go to temple. I go to a synagogue.
Yeah.
So my dad was 100% Greek. Like you say, if you saw my dad, you'd say 100% Greek, everything except
Right.
the religion.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm just wondering,
that's
you were
interesting.
talking about how you guys took on the name of the port, right? So it wasn't Portocalis, was it?
No. No.
Okay, just check. I was just checking. Okay, I just wanted to
No.
make sure. I want to just clear that up right there because people are like, "Oh, was it Portocalis or not?"
No. But it's funny because we did my dad's DNA before he passed away, and he's 60% Sicilian. It was really
Wow.
creepy because his mom told him, we're from Spain. Well, I guess Sicily at the time was under Spanish rule. So he comes out 60% Sicilian,
Yeah.
30% Moroccan, and 10% Western Asia.
Wow.
It's like
Wow.
no Greek at all, like 0.2%.
Yeah.
It was hysterical. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when my sister and I think my mother and then I ended up doing DNA, and one of the things that came up is that I forgot what it was. It's somewhere between 10 and 20%, I think, came up as from Italy. So I thought, maybe I have, maybe we have an uncle has got a small villa on the coast there somewhere, but no such luck. Sorry,
Hey, you never know. You never know.
So, what do you think growing up with that being Sephardic and being Greek? Was it difficult for you growing up as far as an identity? Like, because in a way you were being, I don't want to say you were being kind of put in a corner, but did you have to juggle it at all? Because not like we've talked and you identify 100% as Greek, but back then growing up in Oregon, like, was it hard for you?
No, not at all, because we were, at the time, Portland had a huge Sephardic community,
Okay.
and everyone lived in kind of like within a, walking distance of each other. The city was small at the time, and they embraced us. They were our family. They were, I had no aunts, uncles, cousins. For them, they were our aunts, they were our uncles, and the kids were our cousins. And the same
Yeah.
thing in LA. We came here. My father knew a lot of the families that from Greece. Some were from Thessaloniki, some were Rhodes, Volos, Larissa, wherever. But a lot of the people he knew. In fact, I have one friend here in LA, and she and I were born in the same clinic 4 days apart in Thessaloniki. So
Wow.
she's my sister.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
So
no,
now
I
you-
had no identity. No.
No, that's good though. I mean, because like I said, your story is not one that is very common. I mean, as because like you said, the population of Greek Jews is not very good.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the number is right now, but it's not something that you go around and being like, oh, I'm a Greek Jew, like,
Yeah.
especially now, like, I live just outside of, I'm 20 miles from Times Square. So we have a large Hasidic Orthodox population here. And, if you're not Hasidic or Orthodox, you're not viewed as a real Jew. I have a coworker of mine who refuses to fly, whose mother still lives in, he grew up in Jerusalem. And his mother now lives in Tel Aviv. And he says, I refuse to fly. I only fly El Al on a Saturday when the Hasidics and the Orthodox aren't there. Because if I fly during the week, and if I'm happy to wear my yarmulke on the plane, because I know I'm going to go right to temple with my mother when we land, they chastise him and say, you're not a real Jew.
I know.
And so he kind of got so annoyed with it that he was like, I'm not gonna fly El Al only on Saturdays because you aren't on the plane. It's kind of sad the way a religion kind of compartmentalizes others in the religion, but that's how the world goes around these days.
It's the same thing here as LA. I mean, I want to say 90% are Ashkenazi, and it's a
Yeah.
totally different. They have lox and bagels. What's lox and bagels?
Yeah.
Gefilte fish or matzo ball soup. I said, no, we
Yeah.
we eat fai, we eat pasticho,
Yeah.
we eat you.
You got that right.
No.
Yeah, now you're making me hungry.
That's what I was going to say. Yuvatlakia. Wow, that's a good one.
That's a good one. It's a real good one.
That's a type of, for those listening, by the way, who aren't of Greek heritage, that's a type of meatball soup, but much, much better.
Yeah.
It's kind of like albondigas in Spanish, the Mexican.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have that
Yeah.
here in Arizona. When you were talking about the documentaries, and you're talking about some Greeks who had different levels of, some of them associated with being Greek, but only went to a certain point. It's interesting because I had a friend of mine who was Sikh Indian who came to this country when he was 20, and we ended up in this discussion that I never thought anybody else was thinking about it. And the discussion was, he was frustrated that there's other Sikhs in this country, maybe born in this country, that neither speak the language, understand the culture. They'll go to the clubs and they'll say that they have that kind of ancestry or heritage because it's cool for one reason or the other. But for one reason or the other, that's where it ends. Greeks, very much the same thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many, you meet a Greek and the first thing, you're curious about is, do you speak the language? And I understand not everybody has to speak it, but it seems like there's maybe it's a generational thing where you're born to Greek parents, and part of it, I guess, depends on, our parents, we both went to Greek school, as much as we liked it or not, for a number of years. It's an interesting dynamic, because to me, whether it's food or whether it's language or whether it's music, I like to know the full story, right? And so I don't know if you see some of that, if you see that same dynamic or have a perspective on it. And I'm just curious if it's because we, from generation to generation, it's been one way or the other weaned out. I don't even know if that's the right word, but I'm just curious if you have a perspective on it.
I'm the oldest, so I didn't speak English until first, second grade.
Wow.
And my yaya sent, there was no Greek school back then. My yaya sent the I don't know, it's something they would have, a book they would have in kindergarten, and my mom taught me how to read Greek, and I would have to memorize Tapimata, Ikalia Yelada, I remember that still to today. Now, my middle sister, were 2 years, 8 months apart, so by the time she came along, she's got the Greek, but it's like more spasmena. My accent is still, I still have a, American accent, but I can get away with a lot more. And I think I'm more fluent. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, we never went to Greece. Oh, I never went. My mom took my youngest sister and then my middle sister, but I never went. I didn't go back until I was probably my early 20s. So for me, it was, okay, here I am, I'm back, and, kind of picked up where I left off. And then we used to go in the summertime a lot. So my girls would pick up the Greek, and my oldest lived in Athens for a year. So she's fluent in it. My second daughter, at 10 years old, she says, I don't want to do dancing. I don't want to go to Sunday school. I don't want to do anything. And I said, hey, fine, no problem. She says, I'm American. I said, no problem. Do whatever you want to do. So
Yeah.
here she is now. She's in her mid-30s. Where do you think she is right now?
Yeah, exactly.
In Greece.
Yeah.
She comes home, she works, and then she saves some money, and she goes visits her dad, and she hangs out there. So I said, went under the Greek, and so she went to Greek school. She reads it, but she has a hard time now with getting her tongue going. But she's she's working on it.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was telling my brother hasn't been in a long time, but I've been trying to go like every other year now. And it's funny because you go there, my Greek is pretty on point, and I go there and it's funny, within a day, it goes from being like 90% to like 110%, like in a day. And it's just, and I tell him, I jokingly, like, I think we were talking about how Teton Foods closed, that, like a few days before I go to Teton's Food and just walk around the shop and just listen to them all talk, just to kind of get your ear going back again. And even though, I talk to my mother in Greek and all that, it's just when you're in a community like that, when you're encompassed in it, it's just like, you just get supercharged with it. And it's just like, everything just comes flowing back to you that you've learned, Like the funny thing is, people say I look more Italian, I don't look Greek. So I look more American than anything else. And I laugh because I go there, they think, here's this American. And then they find out that, I'll go in a restaurant and just start talking Greek with them. And they're like, oh, you speak Greek? And then they start, where are you from? And they tell them, my parents are of Constantinople. And then that's such a whole other conversation in itself right there.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I kind of laugh because they kind of size you up there, which I just, I enjoy it because that's what Greeks do. We size you up. But what I laugh at when you go in and you have people and they're talking about Americans and they're like, oh, and you're sitting in the corner just like giggling, and then they figure out that you know what they're saying, and they come up to you, speak. Yeah, of course I speak Greek.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I tell people when I've gone out to, like, I remember before I moved out here, when I was still, actually I was living in Boston at the time, and I was down in New York City with one of my bosses, and we went to Molivos, which is a fantastic restaurant. I think it's still there in New York City, in Manhattan. And so I did all the ordering. And so by the time we got to dessert, and I could hear that all the servers were Greek, which is kind of funny what they talk about, but because it's in Greek, most people don't know. I'm giggling. So he comes over and say, we're going to have dessert. And he looks at me at one point, he goes, are you Greek? I am. Do you speak Greek? I am. Then he goes, Θέλετε καφεδάκι? And then they had an awesome dessert menu, like 7 or 8, and we ordered 1 or 2 of them. Well, all of a sudden, they started coming in. And that's what we talked about, I think, in the first episode, because you were talking about, we talked about this idea that Greeks are interesting in that, and I guess there's other cultures that are similar. Once one Greek identifies another, it's like a whole different ballgame, right? It's and I never paid attention to that, but now I appreciate it. I appreciate it the same way I say that, having grown up in the Northeast with the attitude and the food and everything else, when you're in that part of the country, Boston doesn't really like New York doesn't really like Philly, and so forth. But when you leave, regardless of where you are from the Northeast, it's like you met a friend. Right? It's the same idea, right? Nobody asks you, were you a Greek from, Crete? Were you a Greek from Istanbul? It doesn't matter at that point. You're Greek. And if you speak the language, I think that's a neat dynamic.
It is. When my youngest daughter started traveling with her friends, I said, make any effort to say something, Kalimera, just say something. I said, you'll endear them. And she says, okay, Mom, fine. She said, I'll pick it up. So they were in one of the islands, and there were, they got there and they hadn't reserved a room. So here they are, there's no room. So or there's just one room left, and it's like really expensive. And she says, we're looking for a room and all that. And the lady says, well, I don't know. It's, however many euro it is. And then Katerina said something in Greek. And she said, oh, Elenida. She says, misiti me.
Yeah, exactly.
Price, I said, see, look, you got to have price. Come on.
And that's funny that you say that. So I was in Santorini flying back to Athens, right? And they wanted to charge us for our bags. And I had status with another airline that I was supposed to code share with them. She goes, it's going to be like $50 a bag. And I'm like, I'm not paying $50 a bag. All in English. Well, you got to pay $50 a bag. All of a sudden, I say to her, then drepese.
I love it.
Right?
Aren't you ashamed for those
and I'm
that
like,
are not?
and I say to her, like, then either like, I'm like, ime one came to United, then dovlepis, to computer, then dovlepis po ime. Oh, signomi, no, no charge. Tefkaristo. It's just so
Yeah.
funny. Like, I've never experienced that and I don't know if other countries, like if you're Italian or German, if that happens, but it's just like, I was trying to explain that to my brother, like you go there and you just feel like the only way I can explain it is like a sense of belonging, it's just like, it kind of just wraps you up like you're a gyro, and it just like, just want to rub it around, it's just crazy.
Except when you're in Athens and it's a German lady who knows Greek, because I don't know how she knows Greek, but she's German. And she says, 100 euro. And I said, ochi. She didn't care Greek, no Greek. She said, you're going to pay that 100 euro.
No, you should have gone 999.
I have to remember that.
That's funny. That's funny. Sorry.
No, I just want to circle back. Going to the history of your father. Have you ever gone to Auschwitz? Have you ever? Do you have any?
I cannot. No. I mean, I'm strong. I'm strong-willed. I cannot. I can't. I get to. I feel. It's one thing. I feel spirits and things. It's really, I'm not crazy, but I remember we were with a friend and we had gone to the Rhode Island International Film Festival. We were on our way to Marblehead and we're driving. And I'm telling my friend which way to drive, go here, go there, your highway, town. At one point she stops. And I had kind of like weird things happen to me when I was younger, but I didn't understand what they were. And I had this immediate dread come over me. And I didn't know what it was. It's like I couldn't breathe. And I turned my head, and there's this ugly brown building, 2-story building, hardly any windows, and it's the home of the Salem witch trials.
Wow.
That freaked me out. And then a couple of years later, I'm with my daughter in Lower Manhattan, and, where the towers were, and the water's, doing this, and all of a sudden, I can't breathe again. Because it's like I feel the spirits. I guess, so Ellie, we have to get out of here. I can't do this anymore. I can't. Okay, Mom, then leave. So if I go to Auschwitz, I'll probably fall down dead. I can't do it.
And Shelly, you know what? I know exactly what you mean. I have a lot of premonitions. And as a child, I ignore them, but now I listen to them. And it's funny because I know things are going to happen before they're going to happen. But it doesn't happen to me all the time in places. But I'll tell you the story. I was in Berlin, Germany, in the cathedral there, which was bombed during World War II. But they rebuilt it, and now they have. When you go down to the first, like the basement, it's all the catacombs, and they have all the cardinals. They're all catacombs. It's the first time ever I walked in there, and it's ever in my life where I said, I need to leave here, because it was so like. I can't explain it. Like I couldn't, like you said, you couldn't breathe. There was a heaviness on you. Yeah. And I said, I need to go. I need to go back upstairs. I need some brats and a beer right now, because I feel like I'm choking down here. Yeah. It is the most like stressful feeling I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're like Teresa Caputo almost, you're like the ghost whisperer, come to the light, Carolan, something like that. No, I'm teasing you. But
Shelly,
But
what
the other
do
thing
you?
too is I'll just real quick I'll interject something because I saw that my name's down there on the. All right, Shelly. Do you know my name, Shelly? Dinafto, Dinjo Shelly, Dinafto. And I said, only para tsukli. They did not don masu. I said, Raciel. Di? Raciel. Raciel. Ohira Hiel. Raciel. Rasiel. Raciel. I'm named after my father's oldest sister. What kind of name is that?
Wow.
Okay. Papás muy hebreos, and then you start that whole,
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. By the way, our father's first name was Constantinos, and he went by Gus.
yeah.
I never
Gus.
could figure out how it went from Constantinos
Because
to Gus.
I know the reason. I know the reason why that's happened. If you guys want a fun fact,
Okay.
because
for
in
it.
Roman, right? In Rome,
Mhm.
Constantine was Augustus.
There you go. Okay.
That's why.
There you go.
Because the
That's,
Greeks figured everything out. Don't worry, we did it.
by the way, the worst thing that could have happened for ego for Greeks was watching My Big Fat Greek Wedding with the line that we invented language, because I know my brother and I personally have used that over. As a matter of fact, I pointed out that he made a typo in one of our disclaimer that we put in the front of the video that basically say, the views are solely ours, and he misspelled solely. And so I sent that to him in a text, and he replied back, "We invented language. Now you're trying to change it." Let me ask you this, Shelly. From a project perspective, do you have any other interesting documentaries? Because we have a suggestion for one. For that one that we'd like to make. We just did an episode, the last episode that posted this week. I don't know if you watched it, on Olympic 411. You remember that flight, 1978, 45 years ago, that almost became the largest aviation disaster in history?
Yeah,
If it
I
wasn't
haven't watched
for
the episode yet.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the pilot. And so we did an entire episode on that, because here you have this pilot. Everybody knows Sullenberg here in The Miracle on the Hudson. But
Yeah.
45 years ago, this Greek pilot, also military, also former fighter pilot, did something that even Boeing, in reviewing all of the statistics, said that plane should have crashed. And the crazy thing about it is, the plane landed. There was over 400 people on it. The plane
Yeah.
landed. Everybody got off. And then a few hours later, same pilot, Migalis, right?
Yeah.
I think what's his name? Same pilot.
Migadis, yeah.
Got on a different 747, same route, like nothing happened. So we're like, somebody should make a movie about this, because this is just, if you tell the story, if you look at it, it's incredible. But anyhow, I was just curious if there are other interesting, documentaries or other projects that you're thinking about working on or are working on.
Yeah, I am. I'm the U.S. tour manager for Fotini Baksivani, and she is doing her play, The Lady of Ro, Kiratisro, at the Greek Cultural Center on October 22nd. So I will be in New York for that.
Okay.
She'll be in Boston at the Maliotti Center on October 15th, and we're also going to squeeze in Chicago. I'm also working. I have another client now. And they're coming out. All these things are just coming at me right now. Another young man who is doing a play, a one-man play, and it's also at the Greek Cultural Center. And his name is Michael Dukakis, the actor,
Wow.
not the politician.
Right.
I'll be his, Octus. I have my company is Octus Productions.
Okay.
So I will produce that for him, but we've already scheduled New York. And I'm working on a documentary now. I can't say what it is because, they say if I tell you, I have to kill you.
Yeah.
That's a Sicilian thing.
Yeah.
No, it'll be about Greek women, and it's not necessarily Greek women. I decided to make it international, but it's about professional Greek women, and when I'm able to announce it, I'll let you know.
Okay. Maybe you should have my mother on.
Oh, that would be.
Oh no, because then my mother will say, "What?
Yeah.
No, and I have a big time executive producer who is on board with me, and I'm beyond happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very
That's
happy.
absolutely awesome.
Yeah. So other things are in the works. People are contacting me, and gosh, it's like I'm giving out cards, and I'm not. People just contacting me now.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it's it's certainly great for the community. It's great for the heritage, and it's certainly great for the for the arts and recognition. I mean, that's kind of what we're all
Hmm.
the podcast that you had done with Angelo, connecting with Greeks, kind of had the same vibe to it, and we just we joke about some of the stuff that happened growing up, and then we're like, you know what? Let's because I do podcasts for work. I'm in the technology field all the time, so it's not like we're not used to it. And my brother was doing some other podcasts, and we literally said, "Hit record, and let's see how it sounds." And that's that first episode that we did, and then it kind of built a life of its own because we're like, "Ooh, here's another good story." Okay, now let's structure it because we want to cover a little food, we want to cover a little, and I think part of what we also were trying to do is not just play along the stereotypes, right? We're just not. We called it Baklava Banter because it's catchy, but
Yeah.
we're not going to talk about whose baklava is better or this or that, right? It's a whole different vibe. So, yeah, I think it's fantastic. We definitely at some point in the future episode, we'd love to have you come back on and talk a little more about what you're doing, and we'll see where
Yeah.
we are with the show. So it could be interesting.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I can refer, some friends who have different stories, and see if they
Oh,
want to do a podcast too.
That'd
That
be
would be
wonderful. We appreciate it, Shelly. We really do.
Good.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been wonderful. I mean, who knew? A message from Peter about, is it okay to post this? Only post once a month.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want people to
Well,
hog it up.
Well, it's been a month now, so I think
Oh, okay.
I'll take my monthly allowance now.
Yeah, you could post it. Keep the pasticcio recipe to yourself.
Yeah.
Shh.
And just food. And I have to ask this, Shelly, because I asked a lot of people this, and nobody has a question for me. On the pasticcio side, what's up with the cinnamon? I don't understand this. Who puts cinnamon in this? I don't understand. I just don't understand.
Have you watched Politiki Cucina, A Touch of Spice?
I have
Have you
not.
watched that movie? Okay.
No, I have not.
The filmmaker is Tassos Boulmetis. He's a
Yeah.
dear friend.
Okay.
And he was born in Constantinople
Okay.
and lived
Wow.
there as a child. You have to find the movie.
Okay.
It's called Politiki Cucina or A Touch of Spice in English.
Okay.
You
Okay.
have to watch it, and it's a story of it's his story. Up to a point. They took a little liberty with the story, but it's his story of his papu and the spices. So
And he
that'll
goes
answer
into
your
that?
question. That'll
Okay.
answer your question.
Does he currently live in the U.S.?
No, he's in Greece.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that tidbit
Yeah.
right there.
I didn't
Now I
answer your
have to-
question, but you'll have to to watch a movie.
No, let me watch it first, and then
The-
I'll do a
That was
follow
the
up
best.
later.
That was the best answer you could have given. Oh, you want an answer? Watch this movie because that's
Yeah.
what I do.
Yeah, that's what I do. I like to watch movies. Thanks, Shelly. I appreciate it.
So
Awesome.
when I'm in Greece, I'm gonna say, Tasso, guess what? I was on the interview show, and they were talking about this and that, and I said, I actually plugged your movie.
Yeah. Well, you know what? When you go, because aren't you going to Greece next week?
Yeah.
If you do run into him, invite him. Tell him to come to the podcast. Give him my information. I'd love to have him
Okay.
on,
Sure,
Yeah, that
sure.
would be awesome.
especially
That
since
would
we
be
have
great.
that Constantinople connection.
Connection.
There. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And I will also be there. I mean, just one more plug. I mean, the voting is over, but I was nominated for this Greek International Women's Award. I mean,
Yeah.
it was global, and there's
Yeah.
I think 11 or 12 categories, and I was nominated for arts and culture, and I'm shortlisted. So the ceremony,
Wow.
there's 11 of us,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my bio is all on there, and I think I have a good chance. If nothing else, the short list is just fine.
That's fantastic, Shelly. Congratulations.
Thank
Well
you.
done. Well done.
We'll remember this episode a couple of years from now. Remember when
I'm hoping
she had time?
I'm hoping we get on that acceptance speech right there. That'd be like,
And, you never know, because a friend of mine
Yeah.
said, just make your documentary global. He said, you never know. You could, just give it to the academy, and you never know how things go. And I said, oh, good point.
exactly.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, listen, Shelly, we're coming to the end of our time right now. But once again, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Anytime, I'll contact you. We'd love to have you back in a few months. Just see where you're at. You can see where we're at the time. But from the bottom of our hearts, we really appreciate the time you've taken with us.
Yeah, ευχαριστώ.
I
Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
thank you both for this wonderful opportunity. I, got to, learn more about you two, and sure, would love to on a future episode. And if you need anything in this California area, you're looking for someone or certain, an interview about somebody, let me know, and I can pick someone up for you.
And listen, next time you're in New York, let me know. We can have dinner together.
Yeah, I will definitely be there. I said the 15th to the 22nd for sure, because I always go for my granddaughter's birthday, which is October 23.
Okay. So we'll touch base. We'll get together. Okay. Definitely, I'll come into the city. It's not a big deal.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you again. Right. This has been wonderful. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, guys. For Baklava and Banter, I'm Petraki.
And I'm Soto.
Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, us.